Hi, welcome to the River Channel. I'm Kaitlyn Doolittle from the Hudson Star-Observer, and sitting with me today is none other than Hudson local Kim Benoy, the host of the Midlife with Courage podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell me more about how this podcast got started and, your inspiration for beginning this project?
Absolutely, yeah. So I was a nurse for a long time, and a few years ago, I decided to have a little side business with essential oils. Mm-hmm. And through that process, I did a lot of networking with other business people. And about 3-ish years ago, I was at a business networking group. Mm-hmm. And one of the speakers had said, find something that you really love to do, like what gets you out of bed in the morning, what are you passionate about, and put that into your business. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to think about it. And I realized I love to get up in front of people and talk. I just always have. I teach classes. As a nurse, I got to do that too. And so at that point, it was pandemic time, so we couldn't really go anywhere. Yeah. So I thought the next best thing, my daughter had a podcast, and I thought, well, I'm going to do a podcast too.
Right.
And so that's kind of where it all started. And I wanted it to be for midlife women and just talk about, I call it Midlife with Courage, and talk about that whole process when we get to a certain age and what we do and what we think we should do and what we have to do or not have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And, you're almost on your 150th episode, which kudos to you. That's amazing. And you've interviewed women from every field from across the globe, from former sports reporter Michelle Tafoya, Dr. Gina Simmons, to musician Clementine Moss. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So what has that experience been like, meeting all these people with all these perspectives? What has that been like for you?
It's kind of, it amazes me, first of all, when I stop and think about it. I've lived in Hudson my whole life, and actually I've never been out of our country. Okay. And here I'm talking to women from all over the world, and then local women too. But it's been amazing to me how liberating it is. And yes, I live in a smaller town, not as small as it used to be, but here I am sharing a message from women all over the world, and people are listening to it and getting great feedback on it, and it's just been amazing, like very liberating for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned earlier that, when you are preparing for these podcasts, you kind of let the flow of conversation kind of guide you with that regard. So can you kind of tell me more about that?
Yeah, so when usually a guest reaches out to me, or if I reach out to them, we kind of talk a little bit about what I would like them to talk about, but I don't want it to ever be like a script. Yeah. We're not going to go 1, 2, 3, these are the questions, because that's just not fun to listen to. So I just kind of let them introduce themselves and talk about, what was their aha moment, because I'm usually talking to women who have gone through some kind of a challenge that they learned from. Maybe they woke up one morning and their husband wanted a divorce, or maybe they went through a health challenge. Right. Or I've had a lady who fell out of an airplane, and that's a little life-changing. So we just kind of talk about that story, and I kind of just let it flow where it goes. If they, I'm pretty good about continuing, if they get stuck, or if, I just have figured out how to kind of keep that conversation going. And it just tends to work out, and it's just a nice conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. That organic flow of discussion. I love that. And as you kind of touched on earlier, like the thesis of the show is kind of determining your own fate and kind of defying those expectations that we think we need to follow through. So why do you think this message is so prevalent for today's listeners?
Well, I think we've all kind of learned the last few years that things don't always stay the same.
Right.
That's a huge one. And I think we're finding that we can do different things, or maybe do the same things differently. And I know for me, as I grew up, oldest of 4 kids, responsible, and a nurse, that's a responsible job, and you kind of do what you have to do. But I got to a point where I thought, I don't have to do everything that people expect me to do. And that's what I'm finding with a lot of the guests that I talk to as well. Like you can kind of break out and do things your own way.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
You might not do it successfully, but that's okay. At least you did it. And so there's just kind of a freeing feeling from that.
Yeah, yeah.
We're all kind of learning that.
Yeah, liberating. It's just like, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
someone tells me I can't do something, why not?
Yeah, I love that. And, with podcasting, it just seems like it's an ever-growing market. And so since it is kind of grown into this kind of beast of like media and content, what hurdles have you overcome since starting back in April of 2021, and what have been some highlights since starting?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle was my own mindset, saying, well, no one's going to listen to this, nobody cares, but then I just kind of shoot that little thing off my shoulder and say, yes, they are, and if they don't, that's okay.
Yeah.
So just, that mindset, yes, I do have a message, and these other women that I'm sharing with everyone. And then, of course, the technology, too, has been a factor.
Right.
I used to have my daughter edit all my episodes, but now I figured out how to do it. So she was like, no, it's fine. I can do it. I'm like, no, I can do it now. So the technology, but it's really not that hard. I do it out of my little office in my home at a desk.
Yeah.
So anybody can really start a podcast.
Yeah, as long as they have the gusto and the message and the niche. Yeah, for sure, just to try.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, this work doesn't go without recognition. You're recently kind of regarded as the top 10 podcasts for midlife women by Podcast Tonight. Can you tell me about that moment when you heard that news?
Yeah, it was amazing, because every once in a while I get this little, negative thought, oh, no one's listening,
right.
What am I doing? And then I was kind of having those little thoughts, and I got a message from one of my previous guests who also does podcast, and she said, hey, did you see this? Congratulations. And Podcast Tonight, which is a website that rates podcasts and has information for podcasters and things, listed Midlife with Courage as one of the top 10 midlife for women podcasts. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Listening. So I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, and rightfully so. That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going back to, all these people that you've talked to, and you have all of these amazing conversations, and, can you kind of share some nuggets of wisdom that you've collected over the years that you would like to share with people watching today?
Yeah. And I think, I always talk about midlife women, but I think these little nuggets of information can help anybody. And the number one thing that I have come up with as a theme from all of my guests is self-care. Take care of yourself first. You can't help anyone else if you are drained, exhausted, physically, not capable. Yeah. So you always have to kind of take care of yourself first. And whatever that means, if it's a minute a day, if it's 5 minutes a day, if it's flying off to Mexico for a weekend. Yeah, why not? Whatever that is, then you should do that first. And then you can go out in the world and do what you want to do. And the other thing is just dream big. If you want to start a podcast. And maybe it's not a huge thing. Maybe it's, I want to learn how to paint. Right. You can go to YouTube and learn how to paint. Or take classes, or, just let those things that are in your mind, you're thinking about, oh, someday I'm going to do that. Do it now. Yeah. There's no use waiting. Just do it now if you can. So,
there's no time like the present.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that. And how do you care for yourself? What are your go-to self-care methods?
Oh gosh. Well, I have 2 dogs. So as much as we can, we get the dogs outside for walks, and I love to go outside. We love to go to the state park. There's more than one. Did you know? That's a whole big thing. So we find all the trails, my husband and I, and take our dogs on the walks. I just like to go outside and garden in the summer. Just walking. I love to read. I love to listen to music at full volume. Another thing I've kind of learned to do over the last probably years, to journal. If I'm getting worked up or, something's just I can't figure something out, I just start writing. Right. And eventually something comes out that I can use. Right. And it kind of helps get things out of here and onto paper.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure podcasting and talking is kind of cathartic and therapeutic in a way. So can be another form of self-care, even though it can be a little stressful and kind of organizing and all that stuff. So, this is all awesome. Before I let you go, can you kind of give out some, your top podcast recommendations that you have for folks?
Oh gosh, well, I know we talked about this the other day. So I love to listen to the Michelle Tafoya podcast. Even if you're not politically on the side that she's on, she's very good at showing both sides. So she has some great guests on there. Podcasting Made Simple is one that I like to listen to for myself for podcasting purposes. And locally, I know Melissa Rose does a podcast as well. She's business oriented for brick and mortar businesses, so I like to listen to that one too. But I also have some midlife women podcasts that I listen to as well. The names are kind of escaping me at the moment, but
I love that. Well, there's so much to choose from, but that sounds like a good pile right there. So, and for people that are interested, Kim's podcast and blog and more are all on your website, midlifewithcourage.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and the podcast can be found all over like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all that good stuff. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and to share your story. I'm Kaitlyn Doolittle, and this is River Channel News.